The first sign of resistance came from Camp Delta 3. Buried deep in the frozen wastelands of Kepler 4 for 2b, the Vorthok guards called it the incident with the broken tools. Dr. Lee Min-ho had been assigned to Tool Maintenance Unit 7, a job the aliens considered suitable for his reduced mental capacity. The neural suppressants had been flowing through his system for 8 months now, supposedly keeping his dangerous human intelligence under control. But as he sat in the dimly lit workshop, surrounded by broken mining equipment, something strange was happening inside his mind. The plasma drill in front of him was completely destroyed. The Vorthok engineers had declared it unsalvageable, fit only for scrap metal. But Min-ho found himself staring at the twisted components with an odd sense of familiarity. His fingers moved without conscious thought, rearranging pieces, connecting circuits that shouldn't work together. "What are you doing, human?" The voice belonged to Overseer Keth Primnaltith, one of the insectoid creatures that ran the camp. Its compound eyes reflected the workshop's harsh lighting as it clicked its mandibles in what Min-ho had learned was a sign of displeasure. "Fixing the drill, sir," Min-ho replied quietly, not looking up from his work. His hands continued moving, guided by instincts he didn't understand. The neural suppressants should have made this kind of complex thinking impossible. Yet here he was, seeing patterns in the machinery that seemed clearer than ever before. Naltith's translator buzzed. "Impossible. The device is beyond repair." Our technicians confirmed this. But even as the overseer spoke, the drill began to hum with power. Min-ho had not only repaired it, he had somehow improved it. The energy output readings on the small display were 30% higher than the original specifications. The workshop fell silent. Other human prisoners had stopped their work to watch, their eyes reflecting something the Vorthok had tried to eliminate: hope. 3 sectors away, Song Ji-hoon was discovering his own impossible changes. The former construction worker found himself predicting guard patrol schedules with perfect accuracy, not through careful observation or timing, but through something deeper. He could feel the patterns, see the mathematical certainty behind seemingly random movements. Block C7 will be empty for exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Starting now, he whispered to his work partner, Kang So-young, looked at him strangely but didn't question it. In the 8 months since the injections began, they had all learned to trust these new instincts that seemed to emerge from nowhere. So-young herself had developed an almost supernatural ability to understand alien technology. Give her 5 minutes. With any Vorthok device, and she could not only figure out how it worked, but envision ways to make it better. The suppressants that were meant to limit human innovation seemed to be doing the exact opposite. The changes weren't just individual. Something collective was happening in the camps, something the Vorthok surveillance systems couldn't detect or understand. Humans were beginning to coordinate without speaking, sharing information through glances and gestures that seemed random but carried complex meanings in the camp's medical facility. Dr. Cho Hyren was making a discovery that would have terrified their captors if they had understood its implications, working with primitive tools and stolen medical scanners. She had been secretly studying the effects of the neural suppressants on human brain tissue. What she found defied everything she knew about biology and neuroscience. The suppressants weren't shutting down neural pathways, they were creating new ones. Human brains were rewiring themselves at an impossible rate, developing structures that had never existed in any known species. "We're evolving," she whispered to herself as she stared at the brain scans. It's not over millions of years, but in months. The stress, the suppressants, the genetic modifications, they're triggering something that was always there, waiting. The implications were staggering. Humans weren't being broken by their captivity. They were being transformed into something beyond what they had ever been before. That night, as the artificial lights of the camp dimmed to simulate darkness, Min-ho lay on his hard bunk and felt something he hadn't experienced since the invasion. Clarity. Not just mental clarity, but something deeper. He could sense the other humans around him, feel their thoughts and emotions like a distant hum in his mind. Across the camp, hundreds of other prisoners were experiencing the same phenomenon. They were becoming connected in ways that transcended normal human communication, developing into something that was both still human and yet more than human. the Vorthok had wanted to create. Docile servants by suppressing human potential. Instead, they had accidentally triggered the next stage of human evolution. In trying to make humanity less dangerous, they had made them into something the universe had never seen before. In the darkness of the camps, as alien guards patrolled, and surveillance systems recorded nothing unusual, humanity was quietly becoming something extraordinary. The suppressants designed to limit them had become the catalyst for their transformation. The resistance was about to begin, but it would be unlike anything that Vorthok could possibly imagine or prepare for. The morning alarm in Camp Deltanine buzzed at exactly 0600 hours, just like every day for the past 6 months. But Han Yujin was already awake, staring at the metal ceiling of his bunk with eyes that saw far more than they should have been able to see. Numbers danced in his mind like living things. Complex equations that once required massive computers now unfolded in his thoughts as easily as breathing. The neural suppressants flowing through his bloodstream should have made him barely able to count to 10. Yet here he was, calculating the exact trajectory needed to reach the nearest star system in his head. "Something's wrong with the machines," whispered his bunkmate, Park Soonmin, a former teacher who now worked in the camp's waste processing unit. "The efficiency reports don't make sense anymore." Han Yujin sat up slowly, careful not to attract the attention of the floating surveillance drones. "What do you mean? We're working faster than before. Much faster. But we're not trying to. It's like our bodies know what to do without our brains telling them." Songmin's voice carried a mixture of wonder and fear. "Yesterday, I sorted toxic waste for 12 hours straight without getting tired. Before the injections, I could barely lift those containers." Across the camp, similar conversations were happening in hushed tones. The humans were changing, and even they didn't fully understand how or why in the mining sector. Kong So-young found herself solving engineering problems that should have been impossible with the primitive tools available to her. The Vorthok had assigned her to basic or sorting, a job they considered suitable for her supposedly reduced intelligence. But So-young was seeing patterns in the rock formations that revealed rich mineral deposits. The alien scanners had missed completely. The copper vein extends 47 meters northeast from Tunnel Junction C12. She told her supervisor, Guard Unit Zeth-44, pointing to what looked like solid rock. "High purity, approximately 83%. The alien's mechanical voice buzzed with skepticism. "Impossible. Our geological surveys show no copper in that sector." But when they drilled, they found exactly what So-young had predicted. The discovery troubled the Vorthok command more than they wanted to admit. How could a human with suppressed cognitive abilities outperform their advanced scanning technology? The answer was becoming clear to Dr. Cho Hyrin, though she barely dared to believe her own research. Working in secret in the camp's medical waste facility, she had been studying tissue samples from fellow prisoners. What she found changed everything she thought she knew about human biology. The neural suppressants weren't just failing to limit human intelligence, they were triggering massive evolutionary changes. Brain tissue was developing new neural pathways at impossible speeds. Genetic markers that had been dormant for millions of years were suddenly activating. "We're not the same species we were 6 months ago," she whispered to herself as she examined the latest samples under a makeshift microscope. The humans around her were developing abilities that shouldn't exist in nature. The changes weren't just physical. Something deeper was happening. Something that connected the prisoners in ways the Vorthok surveillance systems couldn't detect. Song Ji-hoon discovered this connection during his shift in the vehicle maintenance bay. As he worked on repairing alien transport units, he began to sense things he shouldn't have been able to know. The guard patrol schedules, the location of hidden cameras, the exact moment when supervisors would look away, all of this information flowed to him without any visible source. "Sector 7 is clear for the next 2 minutes," he found himself thinking, and somehow he knew it was true. More strangely, when he glanced at his work partner across the bay, he could see in the man's eyes that he had received the same information. They were sharing knowledge without speaking, without any form of communication the aliens could monitor or understand. This collective awareness spread throughout the camp like an invisible network. Tools began appearing where they were needed most. Work crews in different sectors started coordinating their efforts without any apparent contact. Information about guard movements, supply deliveries, and security weaknesses flowed between prisoners like water finding its path downhill. Overseer Alvara noticed the changes in her daily efficiency reports. Human productivity was increasing by impossible amounts. It's more troubling. The prisoners seemed to be anticipating orders before they were given, organizing themselves in ways that violated every principle of prison management she had learned. Increased surveillance in all sectors, she ordered her subordinates. Monitor human communications more closely. But there were no communications to monitor. The humans had developed something beyond traditional language, a form of collective intelligence that operated on frequencies the Vorthok couldn't detect or comprehend. The evolutionary leap was accelerating. Each day brought new abilities, new connections between minds that should have been isolated and controlled. The Vorthok had tried to create perfect servants by suppressing human potential, but they had instead unleashed something far more dangerous than they could have imagined in the darkness of the camps. As alien technology watched and recorded nothing unusual, humanity was quietly becoming something unprecedented in the known universe. The neural suppressants designed to break them had become the catalyst for their transformation into beings of collective consciousness and enhanced capability. The Vorthok's greatest mistake was about to become their worst nightmare: the explosion. That destroyed Guard Tower 7 happened at exactly 14:37 hours on a Tuesday. But Security Chief Bei Donghayan knew it wasn't really an explosion at all. The twisted metal and melted circuits looked like the result of a plasma bomb, but the energy readings were all wrong. This was something else entirely. How many humans were in Sector 12 when it happened? He asked his second-in-command, a nervous Vorthok technician named Relthok. 47 prisoners, sir, all accounted for. They were performing routine maintenance. On the water recycling systems, Relthok's mandibles clicked anxiously. But sir, the energy signature doesn't match any known weapon. Dong Han studied the wreckage with growing unease. 18 months ago, he had been just another human prisoner, broken and defeated like all the rest. But unlike the others, he had been selected for the Vortex collaboration program humans, who showed leadership potential, were given slightly more freedom in exchange for helping to manage the camps. What aliens didn't realize was that this program had created the perfect spy network in the abandoned mining tunnels beneath camp. Deltanine Kong So Young held up her latest creation with quiet pride. What looked like a simple maintenance tool was actually a directed energy weapon capable of cutting through 3 meters of reinforced alien armor. The beautiful thing about their technology, she explained to the dozen resistance fighters gathered around her, is that they never think outside their programming. They see a plasma cutter and think it can only cut. They see a communication array and think it can only send messages. They can't imagine using these things in ways they weren't designed for. The weapon in her hands had been built entirely from stolen scraps, pieces of broken mining equipment, crystallized salt from the food processors, and salvaged circuits from damaged surveillance drones. It shouldn't have worked according to any known principles of physics, but somehow it did. How do you know all this? Asked Park Min-jen, a former soldier who had become one of the resistance cell's most trusted fighters. I mean, how do you know things you've never learned? So Young paused, trying to find words for something that felt impossible to explain. It's like the knowledge is already inside my head, waiting for me to find it. When I look at their machines, I don't just see what they do. I see what they could do, what they should do. It's like I understand the universe better than I used to. Similar conversations were happening in hidden cells across 12 worlds. The human resistance had grown far beyond anything the Vorthok had anticipated. But not in the way traditional rebellions developed. There were no radio communications to intercept, no supply lines to cut, no central command structure to destroy. Instead, there was something much more dangerous. A network of consciousness that spanned light years. Yuntamen felt it most clearly. During the liberation of Camp Epsilon 3, as he led his team through the outer perimeter, he could sense other resistance cells on distant planets beginning their own attacks at the exact same moment. Not because they had planned it, but because they all somehow knew it was the right time. The assault on Epsilon 3 should have been impossible. 200 human prisoners, most of them weak from months of hard labor, against a fortified camp, defended by advanced alien technology and battle-hardened Vorthok warriors. But the humans moved like they shared a single mind. When one fighter fell, another was already moving to cover the gap. When guards tried to flank them, the prisoners seemed to know exactly where the attack would come from. Tools became weapons, workers became soldiers, and the impossible became inevitable. The Vorthok defenders found themselves fighting something they had never encountered before, an enemy that anticipated their every move, that turned their own technology against them, that seemed to bend the very laws of physics through sheer force of will. When the camp fell, surviving alien guards reported something that terrified Vorthok High Command more than any conventional military defeat. The human prisoners hadn't just worked together, they had moved with perfect coordination despite never having met before. Fighters from different sectors had combined their efforts seamlessly, as if they were parts of a single organism rather than separate individuals. "They're not using any form of communication we can detect," reported Commander Vextel to the emergency session of the Vorthok Council. "No radio signals, no quantum entanglement arrays, no psionic emanations. Yet they coordinate across vast distances with precision that exceeds our best military units." The revolution was spreading faster than containment was possible. Each liberated camp became a training ground for new abilities, new ways of thinking, that pushed human evolution even further beyond its original limits. The neural suppressants that were supposed to keep them docile had instead unlocked potential that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of reality. But the most terrifying reports came from the science division. Human prisoners were now displaying abilities that their physicists insisted were impossible. Matter manipulation through focused thought, instantaneous information transfer across galactic distances, energy creation that violated conservation laws. The Vorthok High Command gathered in emergency session, their compound eyes reflecting the light of distant stars as they contemplated their options. They had created something beyond their understanding, beyond their ability to control. Their decision would reshape the universe itself. The ancient device hummed to life. In the deepest chamber of the Vorthok homeworld, its crystalline core pulsing, with energies that predated most civilizations in the galaxy. Admiral Gatharvel watched the activation sequence with a mixture of desperation and hope. The Nexus damper had been locked away for 3,000 years, used only once before to end a war that had nearly destroyed reality itself. All human forces are within the target zone, reported his tactical officer. The wave will reach them in 47 seconds. Gatharvel's compound eyes reflected the device's growing light. The plan was brutally simple. Lock the fundamental laws of physics within a sphere encompassing 12 star systems. No more human evolution. No more impossible abilities. More weapons that violated the basic rules of existence. The humans would be trapped in a universe where their enhanced consciousness could no longer reshape reality, 40-7 light-years away. Physicist Immunesio felt the change coming before any instrument could detect it. She was coordinating the final assault on the Vorthok defense stations when reality seemed to shiver around her like water disturbed by a stone. "Something's wrong," she whispered to her team leader, former construction worker Kim Hoyan-woo. They were floating in the abandoned cargo bay of a captured Vorthok cruiser, using their enhanced abilities to guide the massive ship through space battles that conventional physics said should be impossible. "I feel it too," Hoyan-woo replied, his eyes wide with sudden fear. "It's like the universe is getting ... smaller." The wave hit them 3 seconds later. Reality solidified around Immunesio like hardening concrete. The quantum connections that linked her consciousness to thousands of other humans across the galaxy suddenly felt strained, compressed, as if someone was trying to squeeze an ocean through a straw. But instead of breaking, the connections grew. Stronger, her enhanced mind pushed against the barrier that was trying to lock her abilities away. The barrier pushed back with the force of fundamental physics itself. And in that moment of resistance, something unprecedented happened. The human Quantum consciousness network didn't shut down under the pressure. It amplified beyond anything that had come before. On the agricultural world of Kepler 438b, Lee Jae-soon was leading a squad of liberated prisoners against the last Vorthok stronghold when the reality wave reached him. The pulse rifle in his hands suddenly felt wrong, like it was made of ideas rather than metal and energy. He watched in amazement as the weapon dissolved into pure light, then reformed itself according to his will rather than its original design. The new version could cut through space itself, creating tears in reality that allowed him to step from one place to another instantly. "This isn't possible," he whispered. But even as he spoke, it was unconsciously reshaping the ground beneath his feet, turning stone into something that rippled like water around him. Other humans were experiencing similar transformations. Teacher Park Jung-sik found he could make objects exist simply by imagining them clearly enough. Engineer Han Suben discovered she could rewrite the basic forces that held atoms together, creating materials that had never existed before. The Nexus Damper, designed to prevent exactly this kind of reality manipulation, had instead become a catalyst that pushed human consciousness far beyond its previous limits. On the Vorthok homeworld, alarms began screaming through the command center as impossible readings flooded in from across the galaxy. Space was fracturing. In 12 different star systems, time was flowing backward in some sectors and speeding up in others. The neat, ordered universe that had existed for billions of years was coming apart at the seams. "Shut it down." Gothtar Vel screamed at his technicians. "Shut down the Nexus Damper immediately."
What?
But it was already too late. The device had done exactly what it was designed to do. It had locked the fundamental constants of physics within its area of effect. The problem was that human consciousness had become part of those fundamental constants. And when locked in place, it gained the power to rewrite everything else. Dr. Cho Hyren felt the change from her position aboard the lead assault ship approaching the Vorthok capital. The enhanced neural pathways in her brain, already pushed beyond normal limits by months of alien genetic manipulation, suddenly found themselves able to perceive and manipulate the basic code of existence itself. Matter was just energy moving. Slowly, energy was just information arranged in specific patterns. And information could be rewritten by minds that understood the underlying structure of reality. She looked out at the stars and realized she could feel each one individually, sense the nuclear fires burning in their cores, understand the gravitational forces that held solar systems together. More than that, she could change them. The war that had begun with humanity's subjugation was ending with humanity's transcendence. The Vorthok had tried to break human potential and instead had created beings capable of breaking the universe itself. As reality continued to reshape itself around the enhanced human consciousness, one thing became clear: the old universe was ending, and whatever came next would be written by minds that had been forced to evolve beyond every limitation. That had previously defined intelligent life, the cosmos held its breath, waiting to see what humanity would create from the fragments of broken physics and shattered certainty. Dr. Sarah Chen walked carefully through the floating gardens of New Seoul, watching children bend light into rainbow bridges with their bare hands. 6 months ago, this would have been impossible. 6 months ago, humans were still prisoners on their own planet. The reality cascade had changed everything. When the human resistance finally broke free from Vorthok control, something unexpected happened. The universe itself seemed to listen to human thoughts and dreams. Physics became suggestions rather than laws. Gravity learned to dance. Time became a river that flowed in circles. Sarah remembered the exact moment it began. She had been working in an underground lab, trying to understand the alien technology that kept humans trapped. Her colleague, Dr. Martinez, had been frustrated after months of failed experiments. "Why can't we just think our way out of this?" it shouted at the glowing Vorthok device. And then, impossibly, the device had responded. It's not to their tools or their careful measurements, but to Martinez's desperate wish. The barriers around their minds had cracked, then shattered completely. Within hours, every human on Earth began to change, not their bodies at first, but their connection to the world around them. A child in Mumbai had imagined her broken toy fixing itself, and it did. An old man in Snow Hollow had wished for his dead garden to bloom again, and flowers erupted from the concrete in impossible colors. The Vorthok had panicked. Their perfect control system, built over centuries of conquest, began falling apart. Ships that had flown for thousands of years suddenly forgot how to move. Weapons that had destroyed planets became harmless toys. The aliens' own technology turned against them as human. Consciousness spread through their networks like water through cracks. Sarah found former Commander Zixtel in the ruins of what used to be the control center. The tall, gray alien sat among broken machines, his forearms hanging uselessly at his sides. His species had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, but now he looked like a lost child. "We don't understand," Zixtel said through his translator. "How did you do this? How did you break reality itself?" Sarah sat down beside him, something that would have meant death just months ago. "We didn't break it. We just stopped believing it was broken." The alien's large eyes blinked slowly. "Your species was supposed to be simple, predictable. We studied you for generations. You were not supposed to be able to do this. Maybe that was your mistake," Sarah said gently. "You studied what we were, not what we could become. You looked at our limits instead of our possibilities." Around them, the transformed city hummed with new life. Buildings that had been cold metal and glass now pulsed with warm light. The air itself seemed to sparkle with potential. In the distance, Sarah could see human children teaching young Vorthok how to play games that defied the old laws of physics. Not all the aliens had adapted well. Some had fled to the outer edges of the galaxy, where reality still worked the way it used to. Others had shut themselves away, too afraid to face a universe where their former slaves had become something beyond their understanding. But some, like Zixtel, were trying to learn. Sarah had been working with him for weeks, helping him understand the new way things worked. It wasn't easy. The Vorthok had built their entire civilization on the idea that the universe followed strict rules. The concept that reality could be changed by belief and will was almost impossible for them to accept. "Show me again," Zixtel said quietly. Sarah smiled and held out her hand. She thought about warmth and light, about the feeling of summer sunshine on her skin. Slowly, a small star formed in her palm, no bigger than a marble, but burning with gentle fire. Zixtel reached out with one of his long fingers, touching the tiny star. Instead of burning him, it felt like warm silk. His eyes widened. "It responds to emotion," Sarah explained. "To memory and hope and love. Your technology was all about control and force. Ours is about connection and possibility. Will you teach us?" Zixtel asked. "Will you help us learn to live in this new universe?" Sarah closed her hand, and the star became a butterfly that fluttered away into the sparkling air. "We'll try. But you have to understand that we're still learning too. Every day, we discover something new about what we can do. Every day, the universe becomes a little more alive." As they walked through the impossible city, Sarah thought about the choice humanity had made. They could have used their new powers to destroy their former masters, to take revenge for centuries of slavery. Instead, they had chosen to heal the broken places in reality, to build something beautiful from the ruins of the old world. The Vorthok had been afraid of human potential, and they had been right to be afraid. But they had never imagined that human potential might include forgiveness, hope, and the desire to make the universe a better place for everyone. Now, reality itself was learning to dream human dreams, and those dreams were bigger and brighter than anyone had ever imagined possible.